Can you believe it, folks? We're on a countdown to Christmas Eve and Santa Claus. And the weather forecast this week's a little etchy and sketchy, baby. We're talking not bad today, tomorrow a little bit of wintry mix, and Wednesday they're saying it's going to snow all day. I don't know, I've heard 3 to 5 inches, 4 to 8 inches. Be careful out there as the next few days goes on. My good friend Emil Bove joins us this morning on the Weber Show. We've had Emil on before. He always brings a mountain of information. He's a member of the town board, and of course, I have a chance to watch them on Finger Lakes TV. Of course, the likes of Emil and Don Earl and the rest of the board do a spectacular job for us, the residents of this town. First off, Emil, good morning to you and happy holidays.
Good morning, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of you.
That's right.
From me and my friends at Midday, Miras, and Ricky.
Ah, yes. And speaking of the Miras family, we'll have the family on. Yes, the son and the dad 2 weeks from today. That'll be our Christmas show. Young James, of course, made the final 12 for being an intern for a day with the Buffalo Bills. His family all went down there. He didn't win it, but his experience was spectacular. I've never met the young man. I believe he's 12 years old. He'll be here with his dad, Mike, in 2 weeks.
Yes, Mike was ecstatic about that,
Yep.
and the little guy, he's a very special boy.
Yes. So they'll be here on the couch on the 22nd, and I can't even talk them out of being a non-Bills fan, even though I've been a non-Bills fan for 50 years. The Miras family has it in their DNA, man. Grandfather, great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, they've all been Bills fans. So there's no way to get rid of them. I'm sure they'll come in with their Bills uniform on and their jerseys. That should be a special show. By the way, next week, speaking of shows coming up next week, Rhett Taccone, the new director of fitness and health at the New York Chiropractic College, will be on the couch talking to the dog, getting a little bit about his background. As Jimmy will attest, he did a spectacular job of hosting our opening doubleheader at the New York Chiropractic College. What a spectacular job him and his team did. We'll talk about that later in the show. But, Emil, good morning, and certainly a lot to talk about this morning as far as the town board. Again, I try to check out your meetings when they're on TV. First and foremost, I made a comment on my Facebook page, knowing you were coming in this morning as my guest. It took 3.5 weeks to build the Empire State Building, and it seems like it's taken 25 years to build a new town hall. It just seems that way because, I mean, it just drags on and on and on. Now, please give us an update of where we stand. I know that environmental issues, give us an update for our viewers. Where does this new town hall stand, and when are we going to be able to see a reality of it being built?
Well, I'm not so sure it took 3.5 weeks to build the Empire State Building. So,
all right, a month.
Okay. I think it took a few years.
All right.
But anyways, the town board made a decision to have one building for the police,
Yep.
the court, and all the administrative offices. We picked a site which is out on the Fireman's Field, Old Town Barn property in the corners of South Street, Ovid Street, and Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
We decided to put the building actually fronting on South Street. The engineers are in the process of doing the required environmental study, and we're doing a full environmental study. The engineers are actually in the process of designing the details of the building. So I think we're moving forward, and we hope to start construction sometime next year.
Now, without further ado, there was talk of an anti-group in the town of Seneca Falls saying the money should not have been spent out of a particular fund that we had. Where does that stand? Is there any roadblocks for this to proceed? I had heard rumors about a referendum. What can you tell us? Is there any way this thing will not?
Well, the financing will be in part from the reserve fund, which was created by an earlier board.
Okay.
And there's a little over $2.5 million
Right.
in that fund. We voted earlier this year to move the money out of that fund and spend it on the building. There was a petition for referendum, which was thrown out by Judge Felvey. There was an appeal filed by Sue Savageau, and I'm not sure what the status of that is.
Okay. So there is still something behind the scenes.
Yes, and the building we're contemplating it will cost more than $2.5 million. I'm not entirely happy with that, but it looks like we're going to be able to pay the difference between what's in the reserve fund and the cost of the building out of other funds that we have. Every year you have a balance on hand, and it looks like we have more than the sufficient balance on hand as of January 1st of 2015 to be able to do that.
And just so our viewers can understand, again, I watch it along with Mary sometimes, most of the time when we can, to watch their board meetings on TV, which obviously are taped. Emil, talk to me a little bit about the scheduling of meetings. Are you going to have a meeting this month? Has already happened? What are the dates of the meetings continuously, month to month?
We have a meeting the first Tuesday of every month at 7 o'clock. Okay. And then we have special meetings.
Right.
This month we're going to have a year-end meeting, and I think I'm sorry, I can't be more definite, but it's either the 29th or the 30th. Mm-hmm. It's end of the year things that come up that have to be procedurally done before the year closes.
Now, of course, Emil, switching subject, the Supreme Court snafu that involved the Board of Supervisors and the famous not getting the paperwork in. You being an attorney can recognize the importance of this, of not getting the correct paperwork in on time, even though David Dresser, who was a board member, has written a letter, a request to Chief Justice John Roberts to consider maybe taking it to hear the case. What impact, I'm sure it's going to be a major impact, with the impact that we continue to look at the non-payment of taxes as far as foreclosure, a big issue, obviously a big issue with the town of Seneca Falls, because if taxes aren't collected, that certainly leaves the coffers a lot less money than it would be in there. What is the impact right now? And you don't have to be specific about numbers, but obviously it's not going to be it's going to certainly be an adverse impact, correct, as we continue to go on with this, without collection of taxes.
I'm glad you brought this subject up, Harold. Seneca Falls, the town of Seneca Falls is the town that's most adversely affected by the relationships with the Cayuga Indian Nation. Mm-hmm. And the litigation over the ability to foreclose for non-payment of real property taxes, that's one issue. And, one of the worst things that could happen to a lawyer is to miss a deadline. So allegedly, I haven't seen any of the papers, and I want to make clear this is only Emil Bove speaking. I'm not speaking for the town board or any other group. But reportedly, a deadline was missed. An application has been made for leave to late file the application for certiorari, and the decision hasn't been made yet. So, it may be premature to really make the final decisions about responsibility and so on until the Supreme Court rules. Mm-hmm. But it is an important case. It would be very positive to have it heard by the Supreme Court. As far as a result, I wouldn't want to comment. But the town is adversely affected. There are some ways that the town is reimbursed, because when town taxes aren't paid, the bills are turned over to the county, and then the county, as I understand it, the town gets reimbursed. So it's really the county that bears the financial burden. That's my understanding. I may be wrong. It
is amazing to me, and a common layman who, as I told Emil before he went on the air this morning, and I probably have told you, the viewers of my show, I have always been a big fan of law and to watch lawyers do their thing. I've made it very clear. I sometimes, quite often, go to Seneca County Court just to sit as a spectator. Thank God I don't have the orange on. But I sit there to watch the attorneys work with the Judge Bender. I've always found that fascinating. Another thing that I do, again, I marvel at how attorneys do these things. I love to listen to the audios, Jimmy, of the Supreme Court oral arguments, which you can go into supremecourt.com or whatever it is. Click on, and there's a million cases that they listen to or they hear. And I love to see the attorneys get up and give their arguments. And I love to hear the justices, all 9 of them, interrupt the attorneys. And I find that fascinating, because you kind of get a feeling where the justices may be going. But, Jimmy, always, you never can tell. But I've always been fascinated by attorneys and the way they work a courtroom. And as Emil told me before I went on air this morning, these justices love to do this. They only Emil give you a few seconds, and you better be prepared, and you better get to the point, right? Because if not, they're going to keep asking you questions.
So you mentioned the reimbursement, which is good. That at the end of the day, we're not totally getting stuck with that lost revenue. But people shouldn't be misled to believe that isn't taxpayer money. It's just the county was reimbursed by the state, and so it's all kind of coming out of the same big taxpayer pool that the Cayuga Indians aren't contributing to.
Yeah.
Well, I think the whole issue of payment of taxes, non-payment of taxes, foreclosure, that's one issue. But again, Seneca Falls is the town that's most seriously impacted by this. It's really unfortunate that with the Cayuga Indian Nation, we don't have one recognized entity to deal with. You've got these two factions that are interacting and don't seem to be able to agree. So it makes for a lot of problems. Law enforcement is trying to deal with that. I mean, every time one of the factions takes over one of the sites, law enforcement is there.
And law enforcement's paid by taxpayer dollars.
Right, and the people should know that it's not just the Seneca Falls Police Department, that there's actually a task force that consists of FBI, state police, ATF, our police department, the county sheriff, and they actually meet. And they meet with representatives of the two factions and discuss these issues. Something very unfortunate happened a few weeks ago where some agreements were made as far as transferring vehicles from one group to the other, and it didn't happen. The group that was in possession destroyed the vehicles. The police had to respond. There was a very tense situation there. So
now, don't we deal with the Cayugas, our law enforcement, different than we would ordinary tax-paying American citizens who would do those same types of things? I mean, these guys are taking over the properties from each other, and it seems like whoever's squatting on the property at the time gets to operate it. And I know that any other citizen of Seneca Falls that operated in that manner, they'd be in jail right now. They'd be shut down. But for some reason, the Cayugas are allowed to live and operate almost in a Wild West type of manner without having these laws enforced. And there have been arrests, I suppose, but are you following what I'm saying?
Yes. Well, the issue with these takeovers is that no court has decided who's entitled to possess those places. There was an action brought before Judge Benner, but it was dismissed. So it would be if there were two property owners that were arguing over who owned the garage, the police would be probably not be refereeing that. And that is the basic difficulty. So one group comes in, takes over, the police observe, and hopefully it's an orderly process. But it is difficult. It's taken a lot of attention of our police department. And you have to look into the future. If these issues are going to be resolved, again, I get back to this point, it would be best if there was one entity, one recognized Cayuga Indian Nation that you could interact with.
What's amazing to me is we can send people to the moon, and we can do a lot of things in this country and around the world, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs cannot come to agreement on who should lead. That this has been in their lap, as you know, Emil, for some period of time. Is it Clint Halfdown? Is it the Unity Council? Or is it some other, organization? And it blows my mind that the Bureau of Indian Affairs just drags their feet, and it just continues like a timepiece, just keeps on ticking. And we ought to at least find out, like you said, who's in charge, according to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. At least then the police department would have some control of going to these folks or these folks. It does get a little monotonous. By the way, speaking of law enforcement, Emil, I know that Stu Pinstra, the chief of police, comes to your meeting, obviously, and gives a report. And I know you mentioned off air that you were very impressed with him. And so was I, and so was Jim. He's an outstanding individual. His department has been doing a great job. And as I pointed out to you, one of the things that impressed me was the accreditation that Tim Snyder led, which I understand, like, it could be 20% or 20 police departments in the entire state have attained this accreditation. So you got to be very happy and very proud of what he's done and his department has done.
Well, the whole dissolution process has been very challenging, and I think the prior board made a lot of decisions and laid the groundwork. And the board that came on in 2012, and now the fellows that came on this year, we're charged with making the transition happen. And one of the questions was about the police department and so on. And I think it's just been very positive how it's all been handled. The accreditation is very positive. It sends a message out that we have a professional police department with all the right policies and procedures.
Very well
But
said.
but there are a lot of challenges now in the town of Seneca Falls. Of course, there's the Cayuga Indian Nation, but there's a lot of business for the police come out of Walmart. So they are very busy.
And by the way, you probably saw in the paper, I'm sure Emil did as well, the Seneca County Sheriff's opening up a satellite at the Waterloo outlet. So, according to Jack Stenberg, the sheriff, indicating there are some 380 calls a month that pertain to the outlet. Kind of a good idea. We'll see how it pans out. So there's going to have a satellite office at the Waterloo Premium Outlet stores. So we'll see what happens. By the way, Emil, before we take our commercial break, we had a couple of young ladies in a few weeks ago from the Historical Society involved in, obviously, the women's rights movement and all that we offer in this wonderful town of Seneca Falls. Kathy Jans Duffy, along with Lorraine Withers, were on the couch talking about the phenomenal number of attractions that you can visit here in the town. And I asked them point blank near the end of the interview, what could we do as a town to better enhance the opportunity for people who visit us? And they basically said they would like more signage. Now, is that an element where they would come to you or to the board and present themselves of asking for more signage for various destinations of our town? Is that something I would assume they would want to come and make what? An offer of a request? Well, I asked them what their concerns were.
There was a signage improvement done a few years ago.
Okay.
So, and that seems to be in the core part of
Okay.
the old village town.
Right.
And so there could be more signage. It'd certainly be agreeable to studying that
Okay.
and thinking about, we're working on a parking grant to study parking, because parking is an issue. If you're going to have more people coming into the community, which is what we want,
Right.
you need better parking, and it has been identified as an issue. And before we go to break, I think
Yep.
we should all tell everyone, remind them that this weekend is the It's a Wonderful
Yep.
Life celebration.
Yep.
And it will be an exciting few days, including the big race.
That's right.
And we hope everyone that's hearing us today would come to Seneca Falls for that. And just one more quick boost. Next year, we're going to have a celebration of the 100th centennial of the creation of Van Cleef Lake. Carol Ritter, who everybody knows, has been spearheading that. So we're going to have some kind of a festival in August of next year when the lake was created and filled up. And then hopefully after that, every year we'll have some kind of canal fest.
And by the way, before
Well, I was going to say,
Yeah.
Doug, Thursday night of this week, Light Up Seneca Falls, something new. At dusk, they're going to turn on all the lights. There's going to be some new garlands crossing Fall Street that were donated by Generations Bank and Lakeside Engineering and the It's a Wonderful Run people and some other business. I hope I didn't forget anybody off the top of my head. But that's another event that'll actually kind of lead right into the It's a Wonderful Life weekend, and then the race on Saturday. And people that love Seneca Falls, this coming weekend is why. I mean, we really put it on display for Christmas and for this event, and it's going to be a great weekend.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that in a second after we take our break. But before we take our break, I must talk about choo-choo trains, these trains. Emil, I must tell you that you and me have been friends a long time, and I go to bed about 9:30 every night. You're still in a meeting at that hour. I'm old, and I need to get my sleep. But my question is, as I lay my head on my pillow, about 10 of 10 every night, I hear a train coming by. As you know, we live in the school building. Now, is the 10 o'clock deadline for trains that go by the old building? Because it seems like around 10 o'clock every night, there's a train roaring through. And I just wondered, is that the deadline of when the trains can come by? Have you ever noticed, like, you're close by, too?
Yeah, I've actually lived a large part of my life at 46 State Street and grew up being fascinated by the trains. And Harold Sanderson and I used to play in the old train station.
There you go.
And there were many trains in those days.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure. I don't even want to comment on regulations. We do hear the trains.
Yep.
I don't think they roar through. They proceed very
They make a lot of
slowly.
noise, though.
They do make a lot of noise. I understand, but the tracks are there. The railroad owns the tracks.
I know.
I don't think it's a negative thing to have railroad.
I had to bring it up because it
transportation.
interrupts me falling asleep, but that's okay. This is my show, so I'm talking about the trains.
Okay, we can address all of your personal concerns. That's fine.
The dog needs to sleep. I'm getting old. Emil, you and me are not quite as old as I am, but maybe you are. No, you're not. I'm older than you are. I got to be. I'm older than most people, folks. Hey, it's Weber this week. Hope you're having fun. Emil Bove, our good friend and town board member. We're going to talk about some other issues as we move on with the show, but when we come back after the break, we'll go through a couple of sports items that Jimmy's not feeling very good about. St. John's and SU. We'll talk about that and a couple other items after we come back from this break. Cayuga Lake National Bank. Bill Ryan and his team for all of your banking needs. Offices in Union Springs and Aurora. A fine sponsor of this show for over 30 years. DA Liquor, Seneca Falls. Amy Padula and her great team will find that right spirit for you every time. Tell Amy the dog sent you. Steve Wadhams, Wadhams Enterprises, your employer of choice. Proud supporter of this show and local athletics. Bob and Leslie Oman, owners of the Oman Theater, in Lions as well as the Newark Pilots, a minor league baseball team with a major league ballpark. SenecaFallsCountryClub.com, awesome 18-hole layout, offering a 12-month payment plan. Wilson Press, WPress.com, Seneca Falls. Rich Ricky, my good friend, and his team can handle all of your printing and mailing needs. We're back here on a Monday morning, the 8th of December, 2014. The dog with you. H-Ware, how you doing, folks? Enjoy your weekend. My good friend Emil Bove, member of the Seneca Falls Town Board, is with us. But before we get back to Emil on some other topics, let's talk a little bit about the world of sports. You know, Super Bowl's coming up February 1st. Not that far away, folks. You know why it isn't that far away? Because I see boards being put up around different bars. So get your numbers early. By the way, I got a feeling, I don't know, after what I saw yesterday, could we have a Seattle New England matchup? New England looked tough last night. They went on the road, played San Diego. San Diego took an early lead, but New England does what New England does, Jimmy, and they look impressive. And you know what's impressive about New England? They got the greatest tight end that I've ever seen, Gronkowski, and they just got...
He's on my fantasy football team.
Oh, I love that guy. Big, speedy, rolls over people. I don't know. I mean, it may not be New England, Seattle, since I'm predicting it won't be. But, Jimmy, they looked awful tough. And Seattle goes into Philadelphia. Philadelphia hardly ever loses at home. They got thumped by the Seahawks.
Yeah, it was a surprise. But, it's really hard to figure out because you remember just 2 weeks ago, New England got absolutely steamrolled by Green Bay.
Exactly.
So, and even with Denver, only beating the Bills by a touchdown in Denver, and the Bills hold Peyton Manning to his worst game in probably 2 or 3 years. It's the NFL is a really hard thing to figure out. So I can every week, I don't bet the games.
No, I know,
and I think you'd lose your mind if you really did.
Well, I have a buddy that says the fix factor is in the NFL. I won't mention his name. I've always scoffed at him and laughed at him for making that comment. But how about this one, folks? Last week, the Raiders go to St. Louis and lose 52-0. Got that? They go home. They beat San Francisco, who I still think's a decent team. They beat them. How do you figure that, folks? And speaking of how do you figure Las Vegas and the betting odds, I always find this fascinating. I look at the paper and the odds, of course, are printed in there. Over under, the total number of points between two teams. The Cleveland Indianapolis game yesterday, the over under for Las Vegas, where billions of dollars are bet every week, had it at 50 points. They're saying the combination will be 50. You know what the final score was? 25-24. 49. How do you do this stuff? It's amazing. They don't build those casinos out in Las Vegas because they lose either, folks. Hey, by the way, the Final Four's been announced. I know Emil, myself, and Jimmy are big college football fans. I know the TCU and Baylor contingents are upset because they weren't selected. It is what it is. Alabama is going to bring it on. And, of course, Alabama's going to take on Ohio State, Nick Saban, Urban Meyer. And, of course, the other game will be Florida State. And, of course, they'll take on the likes of Oregon, who many people think may win this. Jimmy, your quick thoughts on the Final Four?
My thoughts are that 4 is not enough.
Yep.
I mean, TCU, Baylor, especially TCU,
Oh, yeah.
kind of gets screwed. And again, it comes down to like Ohio State's the bigger,
Yep.
Marquee name.
And credit Ohio State, they beat Wisconsin 59-0 with a third-string quarterback.
Yeah, but again, you get back to the point of, if they only won by 10, would they have made that? It should be about winning and losing, and I think that this thing needs to go to 8 before it's finally set for a while. But it won't. It'll stay at 4 for probably 3-4 years, and then maybe it'll expand.
I could understand where a TCU Horned Frog fan, as rabid as they are, Baylor coaches complaining. How about TCU, folks? They were third last week in the breakdown, number 3. They're out of it this week. They're not going to be in the Final Four. Oh, by the way, they played Iowa State, a weakling in college football, at TCU Saturday. The line, as I just mentioned, the line was 35. How much did TCU win by? 51. And they dropped to 6.
And that's just not right. That's just not right.
They won by 51. I mean, they say you need style points.
Yeah, I think what you need is money points. I think that if you're Ohio State, they look Ohio State versus TCU and figure out which one's going to make more money, for the TV viewership, merchandising, all that stuff. And,
amazing.
It's hard not to think that that's almost more important than what happens on the field to these people that are deciding. And expand it to 8, and then you won't have to worry about it. There'll be less controversy if you miss it at 9.
Right.
If you're the 9th team out, well, hey, there's a lot you could have done, but there's not much more TCU could have done. And it's, I just think it's a shame. And I think actually not much has even changed, to make it better. Sure, it's a 14 playoff. Those games are going to be great, but it needs to expand.
By the way, Jimmy, you were doing a triple header play-by-play. Outstanding job. I watched and listened to most of it. At Victor High School, Jim was the play-by-play guy for 3 games. I did that years and years ago. I'm way too old to do that. I did a doubleheader, and I thought I was going to not make it home. I was so tired. Congratulations on a great job. You, of course, get back and find out SU loses to St. John's. In basketball, Jimmy Baham's got a young team. They got some talent. But I said it before in my Facebook posting. I'll never change my opinion. Syracuse will go as far as Cooney can hit some threes. If Cooney is cold like he was against St. John's, forget about it. You're not going to beat many teams without him hitting some threes. And, Jimmy, you watch Syracuse. You live and die. You're a graduate of that school. Cooney has got to make a few threes. I don't mean he has to make 9 out of 10, but you got to make a few.
Well, I watched the game on Sunday on tape,
cold.
Knowing what had happened. And what a great game. Big East style game. And just the end kind of put a damper on what a great basketball game it was.
I agree.
I'm a little concerned about Syracuse. It's different now. We're on the bubble right now. For it hasn't been a while since we've had to go towards Selection Sunday.
Big time.
I'm wondering if we're going to be in. This might be one of those years where we have to keep our fingers crossed and hope the committee puts us in. But
you agree?
I think we got enough talent. Yeah, Cooney needs to make shots. Of course, he's somebody needs to make shots, and he's the most likely candidate.
Yeah.
But I really do believe that we have the right talent, and it will eventually meld together when you watch McCullough and Christmas.
I love
these guys are good, but at the end of the day, they do need to make some 3-point shots if they're going to win.
By the way, folks, that was the second non-conference game Syracuse lost at the Dome. You go back to 2008. Jimmy will remember it. I'll remember it. Cleveland State, 65-footer at the buzzer, 72-69. 6 years before they lost another one to St. John's on Saturday. How ironic, twist of irony, the kid who threw the 65-footer up from Cleveland State named Cedric Jackson. Why is that important? He was a St. John's transfer.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. At St. John's.
158 non-conference games in between then, and it's a St. John's guy, that did it last
amazing.
time. It's weird. It's crazy.
By the way, Emil promoted it for us. Wonderful Life, 5K runs. Hey, Jeff Rook, Kevin Korzaneski, his team of volunteers, great job. Jimmy Spina, all the work that the town's going to do to bring on all these guests. 4,000 runners expected. Emil's talked about it's going to be a huge gathering. We wish them nothing but the best. And certainly we want to remind everybody that our next doubleheader broadcast here on Finger Lakes 1 TV will be Friday night, Waterloo Minders girls starting at 6 o'clock from Arthur L. Baker Gymnasium at 7:30, Minders Academy versus Waterloo. That'll be a doubleheader coming up Friday night. And our play-by-play guy, David Barnick, will be in the house. He'll be calling a play-by-play for both games. He'll be joined by Kevin Korzaneski along with the legendary Matt Verke. And, of course, Jimmy will be there, and the Hunt brothers will be on camera. And, a lot happening, Emil, and certainly want to take a few minutes to update our viewers about what's taking place? You mentioned the Wonderful Life. As we get close to running out of our allotment of time, any other issues, a quick issue you'd like to touch on before we bid farewell?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we did pass a budget.
Great.
And there was I think it's a 54-cent tax increase. We did not go over the cap, the 2% tax cap, because that's not based on the tax rate. It's based on the funds that the town is spending. And, taxes are an issue here. And I really feel, this is Emil Bove speaking, that with the tax base we have, the only way to resolve the tax burden here is to have sharing by the county of the sales tax revenue. We need more sales tax. If there is a casino or resort, hopefully there'll be a dramatic increase in sales tax. And it's time for the county to start thinking about sharing the sales tax revenue with the school districts. Other states are going away from using real property tax to finance education. Here, they're looking at sales tax, maybe statewide sales tax. Here, I wouldn't even be opposed to a 0.25% increase at the county level if they would use that money to lower the burden on the taxpayer, the real property taxpayers with the school tax.
Well, I know that we are out of time right now, but I know your final saying, I would like you to echo your sentiments with the rest of the board. You have a lot of employees that work for the town of Seneca Falls that do a yeoman job. They probably don't get recognized as much as they should, and I know you would like to just maybe end the show by thanking them for their contribution.
Well, every year, we do compensate them. We give them a raise. I think it's 3%. I think we're very fortunate because they've had a lot of burdens taking over responsibilities that they didn't have before, adjusting to the things that the village was doing, and we have a pretty good team in place, and we're always very appreciative at the administrative level, and the people that do the work in the streets, the water, the sewer, the highways, the courts, the assessor, all of them, they're all very fine people.
Emil Bove, thank you for joining me. Always good seeing you.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, we'll have them back down the road a few months, get updates. How's that town hall doing? Is it going to get built before the umpire? Just kidding. Hey, by the way, folks, remember, Rhett Taccone joins us, a new gentleman taking over the fitness and health down at the New York Chiropractic College. First-class guy. He'll be my guest next week. Then the Mira's Boys, the Bills lovers, will be here on the couch. I'm looking forward to that show greatly. And Joe Siccardi, the owner of Reveille Between the Lakes, will be my guest for the final show of 2014. We are booked for January. We're looking for openings and guests to come in starting in February. So if you'd like to come on the show, talk about whatever, as long as you keep it clean, we'll put you on the couch. Take care, everybody. Watch out for that little bit of snow on Wednesday. That's a look at weather this week. My way.
That's it.
By becoming a patron of FingerLakes1.com. Visit patreon.com/FL1.
FingerLakes1.com